Picture this. A 92-year-old woman steps up to the microphone one last time. Her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow it fills an entire church. What she says next leaves everyone in tears. And what happens at her funeral? Let me tell you, I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. We need to talk about what just happened in the gospel world. Because when Mama Mosie Burks took her final breath, something shifted. Not just in Mississippi, but everywhere her voice had ever reached. And trust me, that voice reached places you wouldn't believe. Now, if you've never heard of Mosie Burks, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a voice so powerful it could make atheists reconsider. A voice that didn't just sing gospel music, it became gospel music. For over 6 decades, this woman turned church services into spiritual experiences that people still talk about today. Born way back in 1931 in rural Mississippi, little Mosie grew up in a house where Sunday morning hymns were as essential as breakfast. Her family didn't have much money, but they had something more valuable. They had faith. And young Mosie? She had a gift that would soon shake the foundations of every church she entered. Think about it. This was a black woman growing up in the Deep South during some of America's darkest days. Segregation. The Civil Rights Movement. Times when just existing was an act of courage. But Mosie didn't just exist. She sang. And when she sang, something magical happened. People forgot their troubles. They forgot their pain. For those few minutes they touched something divine. Fast forward to the late 1980s. The Mississippi Mass Choir comes knocking. They need voices, but not just any voices. They need the kind that can fill stadiums, touch hearts, and bring grown folks to their knees. Enter Mosie Burks. From the moment she joined, everything changed. Her performances weren't concerts. They were experiences. When she belted out classics like When I Rose This Morning, you didn't just hear it. You felt it in your bones. But here's what most people don't know. Behind that powerhouse voice was a woman who never chased the spotlight. Fame found her, not the other way around. She sang in small country churches with the same passion she brought to sold-out arenas. What? Because for Mama Mosie, it was never about the audience size. It was about the message. Now, you'd think someone with that kind of energy would burn out eventually, right? Wrong. This woman was performing well into her 90s. I'm talking about someone who could outlast performers a quarter of her age. Those signature church hats, that infectious smile, that voice that seemed to get stronger with time. She was unstoppable. Or so we thought. Here's where things get real. In her final years, something started changing. Friends noticed she wasn't traveling as much. The woman who used to crisscross the country for gospel events was staying closer to home. But don't think for a second that meant she stopped ministering. Oh no, she just changed venues. Neighbors tell stories about walking past her house and hearing that voice drifting through the windows. Caregivers who came to help found themselves getting free concerts. She'd sit on her porch, barely able to walk to the mailbox, but still able to make heaven feel a little closer with every note. One church member from Jackson shared something that gives me chills. She said even when Mama Mosie could barely stand, she'd position herself in a chair, lift one trembling hand, and sing like she was 25 again. People would gather just to witness it. Not a performance. A ministry. Then came that moment. Just weeks before she passed. A group from the choir stopped by for what everyone suspected might be their last visit. They gathered in her living room and someone suggested singing Near the Cross. As their voices blended together, Mama Mosie joined in. Her voice was weak, nothing like the thunderous sound that once filled auditoriums. But somehow it was even more powerful. When they finished, tears streaming down weathered cheeks, she whispered something that still echoes today. That's how I want to leave this world. With a song in my soul. 3 weeks later she did exactly that. Peacefully. Surrounded by family. Covered in prayer. No drama. No long illness announcement. Just a quiet transition from one choir to another. When news broke, the gospel community went into mourning. But mourning isn't quite the right word. It was more like preparation. Because everyone knew her funeral wouldn't be your typical service. This was Mama Mosie we were talking about. Her homegoing was destined to be legendary. And legendary it was. That day in Jackson, Mississippi, something supernatural happened. Hours before the service, people started gathering. Not just locals. Folks drove from Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, some from as far as California. By the time the doors opened, the line stretched around the block twice. Inside New Hope Baptist Church, they'd set up for a crowd, but nobody anticipated this. Every seat filled. Every aisle packed. People standing along the walls, sitting on the floor, anywhere they could find space. And at the front, a white and gold casket surrounded by flowers so beautiful they looked like heaven's own garden. But then the Mississippi Mass Choir took their positions. No introduction needed. They just stood there in their robes, many with eyes already red from crying. The music director raised his hand, and in perfect unison, without a single instrument, they began When I Rose This Morning. What happened next? I still get goosebumps thinking about it. The entire congregation rose as one. Hands went up. Voices joined in. Some people fell to their knees. Others danced in whatever small space they could find. It wasn't choreographed. It wasn't planned. It was pure, spontaneous worship. One woman who was there told me later, I've been to 1,000 church services, but I've never felt anything like that.